What up? It's Melissa Lee. We're back for another edition of Chaotic Kitchen. Today we're making coconut green soup. I found this recipe randomly a couple years ago and it is a gold standard. The kids love it. I get asked to make this soup at least every other month. And to me, it's a perfect reset from the overindulgence that is the holiday season. It's chock full a ton of veggies and it's a good way to get a bunch of nutrients. And I like it too because it's not too heavy. While I am adding potatoes to this recipe to make it a little bit more filling, it's not going to bog you down. Like I said, it's a great reset. You can make a big batch, freeze some, save it, and just pull it out whenever you're feeling a little under the weather and you're just not feeling like chicken noodle soup. So whenever I've got a recipe like this, I like to take all the produce, not just the ones I'm using, dump it in the sink, the big basin, and add some baking powder to really wash the vegetables. I also prefer to use a tea kettle to measure out the water that's needed, so that way it saves time of boiling the water with all of the ingredients. As you can see here, I've been soaking these in one of those apples still got the tag on it, and then you're going to drain everything and rinse it out. This recipe is great because you can use kale, you can use Swiss chard, and if you want to save a little bit of time, you can get pre-cut kale if that's easier for you. I prefer dinosaur kale over regular kale. So I obviously got this whole, and what I'm going to be doing is just tearing it from the stem later to make sure it's not too sour. So after draining and scrubbing everything really well, we're going to be chopping the harder vegetables, which is, the zucchini, the apple, the celery, and I add potatoes for thickness. If you don't want to add potatoes, you can always add white beans and anything else to kind of thicken it up. I'm using a cast iron pot for this. And then now we're just going to get to chopping. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of chopping. There's going to be a lot of peeling. And if you want to save time, you really don't have to peel the apple skin. This is just what the recipe calls for. But I've made this plenty of times and forgotten to peel the skin. It doesn't make a difference. Tastes the frickin' same. It's just, it cooks a little bit quicker without the skin. And we're going to end up blending this afterwards to have a nice smooth consistency. So like I said, what I really enjoy about this recipe is that you don't have to chop everything exactly precise. I know for me, sometimes I can overthink it when I'm chopping food because it's not exactly the same, especially when it comes to potatoes. If you're roasting them, sometimes things are like double the size of other ones and it kind of frustrates me. So I know in this video I put in russet potatoes, but I realized I was using the russet potatoes for a different recipe and just brought out these yellow gold potatoes. It really doesn't matter the type of potato you use. I just prefer one of these lighter ones without the skin because we are going to be blending it up, and I do enjoy that really green color. So you want to make sure these vegetables or these fruits are not overpowering the green veggies. And I'm mixing it up using 2 different kinds of apples, but again, you want to make sure you're not using too many of these green apples because they are a bit more sour, and we're already adding lime, and I just didn't want to overpower the flavors with that as well. So you're going to chop everything into relatively even pieces. Doesn't have to be too crazy. Don't overthink it. And I'm chopping up all the hard vegetables and putting them all in one bowl because we're going to be sauteing these at the same time, which is also great when it comes to prep work because I like to make this as easy and as simple as possible and try not to overthink it. I find too, I get a little bit bored if I need to do a ton of chopping over and over again. So if you find that that's the case, watch your favorite podcast. For me, I love to put on Real Housewives. Lately, I've been on a Modern Family kick. I've been enjoying it. This recipe is also calling for ginger. I tend to enjoy a lot of ginger. And again, since we're sauteing it, we really don't have to go too crazy with ginger. A good way to peel it is to actually use a vegetable peeler. I've seen other people use a spoon. It's way too messy. You can't go wrong with a vegetable peeler. Just make sure when you're picking out your ginger, you're getting a nice thick piece that doesn't have a lot of curves and a lot of different knobs on it. And when you look at the ginger, you're going to know what I'm talking about. I also love a shallot because you don't have to put a lot. It's a very strong flavor and it's so delicious. I love shallots. Try to incorporate that a lot and switch it out sometimes, even if the recipe calls for a typical onion. I'm using avocado oil. This recipe specifically calls for coconut oil. I prefer avocado oil. It's the gold standard for me. You're going to heat that up. Once it's nice and hot, you're going to throw everything in and you're going to saute it. This should probably take anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes depending because I've got a lot here. Again, there's also no fat in this, so you're going to have to use quite a bit of oil. And this recipe that I'm calling from, it actually had coriander and cumin seeds that you roasted in the pot beforehand. Again, I didn't want to waste time, so I just got it powdered. I'm mixing it all in. You're going to add salt, no pepper in this recipe. I'm just eyeballing everything. The good thing about this is later when it's blended up, you can taste it and you can always add more. So normally I say be real generous, be a little bit more cautious with your seasoning first. Once it all cooks up, then add to it. Since we're also adding a veggie broth, that's got a lot of salt in it. We've got full vegetarians for this recipe, so I am using a veggie base. I personally prefer to use a base, whether that's a powder or this thicker consistency, over an actual veggie broth because it just takes up too much space in my pantry. So I'm adding close to 8 cups of water, and we're going to let this boil after it's sauteed for 10 minutes. And while that's sauteing, we're going to peel all of these things from the spine. Spine in the kale and in the Swiss chard is oftentimes why your veggies might taste sour. Now, if this were a salad or something where I'm not cooking this down or blending it, I would be massaging the shit out of this. Which, by the way, who thought of massaging kale? Who thinks of all of these types of random things for recipes? I often wonder too, how many people had to eat wonky ass mushrooms before they got to the good ones? How many people were riding that roller coaster of psychedelics before they realized, that's not the one we're going to eat every day. Anyways, after those veggies are softened, you're going to throw in this kale till it's melted down, and then we're using a full fat coconut cream. I like to mix it up first so it doesn't curdle in the soup, and it's just easier to mix it in. Now, since I'm blending it, you really don't even need to do this step. You just add all the coconut milk, but if you're making a soup where it's not being blended, make sure you stir it in the can first. Now, I don't have an immersion blender, and I'm not trying to add a bunch of tools that are not needed. So I'm putting this in the blender. I'm adding hemp seeds for extra protein, and I'm blending this slow at first, and then I'm increasing the speed till it's fully blended. And because I have to do this in 2 batches, I'm getting another bowl and I'm pouring this in. Yes, this is going to be a lot of dishes. Yes, it's going to be a lot of busy work, but I'm also making this there's about 6 of us eating this, and there's plenty of leftovers. So you can always half this recipe, and then you only need to use the blender once. I love a Vitamix, but there's plenty of other options you can use, as Vitamix is a bit more pricey. And if it's just you making it, you can use your bullet. So again, I'm adding everything that's in the second batch, and I'm really making sure I'm getting all the liquid in the bottom. That's where all the good stuff is, and a lot of the gingers fall into the bottom. Blending that really well, and then we're going to add lime. We're going to cut some of that sourness with this acidity, and I like to roll the limes first. I use a lot of lemon and limes in recipes, even just in tea. So I find getting this juicer is amazing. And I love the one that's the liquid stays in the bottom and I don't have to hold it over the container. It's a little bit more pricey, but it's worth it. And when using these, I cut the ends off because when you're juicing it, you can really just get the juice all the way through. And as you can see here, I can just juice it right here on the board and I don't have to hold it over the soup. So I'm doing about 3 limes because, again, I love a little sour flavor. And I'm getting all that juice out. We're going to stir it really well, and this is where we're going to taste test. We're going to see, do we need more lime? Do we need to add a bit more salt? Is this going to need some more cumin? Is it going to need more veggie stock? Whatever the case may be, you're going to add more of that to it right now. The great thing with this soup, too, is the kids aren't seeing all the vegetables. Something happens with the kid's brain. It short circuits when it sees all the veggies. I don't want it, it's gross. You blend it up and they think it's freaking amazing. They love it. Now we're going to plate it. I love plating in these beautiful white bowls because it really makes the soup pop. And I swear to freaking gosh, plating makes all the difference. It makes the flavors better, especially when you're giving it to somebody else. I don't know, it's just something cozy about it. So I'm going to add some things for extra crunch, extra protein, because just having this smooth soup sometimes texturally is not the best. So I'm going to be topping this with some chives. You can top it with really anything you want. That's the beauty of this. Pomegranate seeds even if you want for some color. But I love a good kitchen scissor too instead of chopping it up because I've already washed the cutting board. So I'm going to be adding chives. I'm going to be adding some more hemp seeds to the top. And when you're plating the top of this, you got to make sure it doesn't fall to the bottom because of course you want it to look sexy and beautiful. I'm also going to be adding some pepitas, aka some pumpkin seeds. And the piece de resistance, the best part of this, is adding some chili onion crunch. You do not have to use Trader Joe's blend. You can use any blend, but Trader Joe's is just a bit more mild, a little bit easier to digest. So I go that route. Something you can even do too, if you really want to make this look amazing, is you could reserve a little bit of that coconut milk and drizzle it over the top. I didn't, so I just didn't bother. But if you've got any kind of milk in the fridge, even if it's oat milk, then you can drizzle that over. So I'm drizzling a little bit of this, but make sure people stir it, because if they just get a chunk of it, yeah, the body ain't gonna like it. And really, that's it. I hope you enjoy this recipe. It's one of my favorites. Like I said, the kids love it. It's a great way to sneak in vegetables. Make sure to like, follow, share with your friends. Bye.